Hello, everyone. Welcome to our DACA Info Session. I am your host, Carolina Galeano. I am a graduate of Montgomery College and host of MCTV's Generación Latina. Today's session will begin with a presentation by CASA's Emily Sullivan. She is their Legal Services Coordinator. You'll also be able to meet and interact with various key staff members of Montgomery County Public Schools and Montgomery College, who are a great resource to undocumented students. Let's begin. I'd like to introduce Emily from CASA. Emily, if you just want to give me a quick hello, and I also want to make sure people can identify our other panelists. So with us, we also have Margarita Borges. She is the Supervisor of International Admissions and Enrollment in MCPS. We have Priscila Villatoro. She is Enrollment Services Specialist at the Rockville campus of Montgomery College. Linda Robinson, Counselor and Professor at Montgomery College. Hi, Linda. And Maria Garcia. She's ESOL Counselor and Advocate at MCPS. So Emily, go ahead and take it away.
So I'm going to talk basically about what DACA is, what you need to apply for DACA, who qualifies for DACA, and basically everything you need to know about DACA. Great. So first of all, what is DACA? So DACA is a program created by President Obama in 2012 after really significant pressure by grassroots organizations like CASA and the immigrants' rights movement overall following the failure of the DREAM Act to pass in Congress. The DREAM Act has been reintroduced to Congress, and I can answer questions about that later, but basically DACA was a program created by Obama. So what is the current status of DACA? So as some of you may know, former President Trump had decided to cancel DACA in 2017. This, because of court rulings after this decision, DACA continued to exist, but for the renewal of DACA status only for people who are. So basically, DACA is a program that now exists again. As of December 7th, 2020, USCIS, which is the branch of the government that handles DACA, they began accepting new applications again as of December 7th, 2020. And this was because there was a lot of court discussions and decisions that led to a judge in New York deciding that DACA should be reinstated in full, which would mean that new applications can be accepted, that people can travel on advanced parole with DACA, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And basically the main importance is that people who couldn't apply for DACA for the first time from 2017 to 2020 were now eligible. So since then, USCIS has been accepting and processing applications. They have approved many applications. For CASA, we have not seen any approvals yet, but the processing time is 7 to 9 months. So it is understandable that we haven't seen approvals. So that's the current status of DACA. Basically, anyone who meets the qualifications for DACA now can apply for the first time, and they can also continue renewing. So I'll talk a little bit more next about how to actually qualify for DACA. So the requirements for DACA are very strict. Unfortunately, there is no working around the requirements that are set right now. So basically the age range, the dates, those are all very set in stone. So if you do not fall within these categories, you unfortunately do not qualify for DACA right now. There are discussions right now of extending DACA to include people who entered the United States later on or who had different ages. However, that is not in existence right now, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm only going to talk about DACA as it is right now. The first requirement is an arrival in the US before your 16th birthday. The next requirement is an arrival in the US before June 15th, 2007. This is a very firm date. You had to have arrived in the US before June 15th, 2007 in order to qualify for DACA. You also had to have maintained continuous presence in the US from June 15th, 2007 until the present. This, I'll go into a lot more detail later. In order to apply for DACA, you have to provide extensive evidence of this, but I will discuss this later. You also had to have been present in the US on June 15th, 2012 with no lawful immigration status. So even if you entered the US with a visa and then overstayed that visa by staying in the US past your designated stay, you can also qualify for DACA as long as you didn't have any immigration status on June 15th, 2012. One other thing to note is that you can leave the United States between June 15th, 2007 and June 15th, 2012, as long as the departures were very short and you had all intentions of coming back to the US. However, if you left the US after August 15th, 2012 at all, you do not qualify for DACA. So you had to have you have to have a demonstration of education in the United States in order to qualify for DACA. So this can mean various things. So one is that you are currently enrolled in a qualifying educational program, such as high school. You do not have to be enrolled in an actual high school program in order to qualify. You can be enrolled in a GED program. You can be enrolled in ESOL classes that are sponsored by the government. For example, CASA offers ESOL classes that are government funded. So they do achieve the education requirement. So if you are worried about that, you can get the education requirement through ways other than high school if you didn't finish high school or are not currently enrolled. Additionally, if you graduated from a GED program or a US high school, you can also qualify for DACA based on that graduation. And there's also part of the DACA requirements that if you don't have the education requirement, there is a military service requirement that could help you meet it. However, it is very difficult, or if not impossible, to become part of the military as an undocumented person. So this doesn't come up super often, but if it applies to you, feel free to reach out. But basically, if you were honorably discharged veteran of the Coast Guard or US Armed Forces, that also allows you to qualify for DACA. One other requirement is that you had to have been under the age of 31 as of June 15th, 2012, which means your date of birth or your birthday had to have been after June 15th, 1981. So there is basically an age cutoff. If you were born before June 15th, 1981, you do not qualify for DACA. And then the last requirement is you also cannot have any significant criminal history. So you cannot have been convicted of a felony or a significant misdemeanor, including DUIs or drug-related offenses, especially those, and also 3 or more non-significant misdemeanors. If you don't know what that means, don't know what that is, or like concerned that you might qualify under a criminal history bar, CASA can help you figure it out. We can help assess whether or not you would still qualify for DACA. So we can help you with that. And then let's hear from a DACA recipient themselves so they can talk about kind of the benefits of the program.
Hello, my name is Adriana Pral, and I'm currently a student at Montgomery College, studying environmental science and policy, and looking forward to transfer in the spring of 2022. I obtained DACA at the end of my high school, career, and then at the beginning of college. It was in between. Before I had DACA, I did not know if I was going to be able to attend school, so I was always in constant fear. I thought, wow, I know everybody's going into college, but I don't think I can go into college. Like, how are my parents gonna afford this college tuition when it's very expensive when you don't have FAFSA? So I was always in fear. After I received DACA, I was able to get in-county tuition, which was more affordable for us and my family. And it really allowed me to kind of open up, be a little bit more free, pursue a higher education, and also be able to provide with my family. I do work outside of school, so it's a great opportunity for everyone that is able to apply, and also like young adults that want to pursue a higher education. And I do think everybody should apply. If you're meet the requirements, it's a great opportunity to pursue a higher education, continue college, and also be able to work better jobs. And hopefully in the near future, DACA keeps improving and we're able to be a bigger part of society, even though we're already a big group. Don't be scared, there's a lot of people that do support DACA and would want to see like young adults that want to keep moving forward, and there will be support. Just be open, don't be scared, and apply. I think it's very important for our generation.
Before I get into what the required evidence for initial DACA requests are, I realized I did forget to explain what the DACA benefits are. So basically, DACA status, it stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and that gives you a 2-year deferment of deportation. So basically, it is a form of protection from deportation for people who are currently undocumented in the United States. With that 2-year status that you do have to renew every 2 years, you also get work authorization. So work authorization will allow you to get a job, basically like pursue like further like yourself in life. And it also kind of opens up different doorways, which as Adriana discussed, that you can have different opportunities for education. And it also allows you to get a license with the work permit. Those don't inherently go together, but it does help that having a work permit serves as a form of identification in order to obtain a driver's license. So those are the two main benefits of DACA, is that you have that protection from deportation. So you do have an immigration status, and you also have the work authorization card that allows you to work in the US. So now I'm going to go into a very detailed explanation of the required evidence for DACA requests for the first time. So for new DACA requests or initial DACA requests, you have to provide substantial evidence that you meet all of the requirements that I listed previously. So I'm going to start with the easy ones, and then we'll get into the more detailed ones. And again, I apologize for the little bit of lag that is in my computer. So basically, you need to show that you have received an education in the US. This can be your school records from your current year of attendance, your most recent report card, basically any document that shows that you're currently in school, if you are currently in school, if you graduated school or received it completed some kind of education program or received the GED, you can present your diploma from your high school, a certificate of completion from an ESOL program or something like that, or a certificate from a US GED program. And then you can also, as I mentioned, show that you have been honorably discharged from the US Armed Forces using different types of documents from the US Armed Forces or Coast Guard. Again, that does not come up that often, but if it does, let me know. And I just want to show you some examples of what type of evidence I mean. This will get more important later on as there's different intricacies for the actual requirements. But obviously, a high school diploma looks like this, shows like the name of a person that graduated in the US high school that they graduated from. And this will show that they meet the education requirement. Attendance records can also be used to show the education requirement as long as they include the current year of attendance. If you are currently in school, you should ideally have a confirmation of your attendance at school up until about a month before you apply for DACA. So it's really important to get your attendance records, and I will go into that more later when I talk about the evidence to basically show that you are here in the US. You also must have a proof of identity. These are pretty straightforward. You can have your passport, doesn't matter if it's expired or not, as long as you have the passport with your photo on it, any government issued ID, such as a driver's license, your birth certificate, if it has your photo on it, an immigration document, if it has your photo on it, or a school or military ID that again has like your name, your photo, your birthday, but it has to have all three of those. And these are just examples again of the documents I mentioned, but you can show a passport, driver's license. You can show like a foreign ID or a consular ID from your home country if you have one of those. And then this is going to be the section that is the most complicated to collect. And it's going to be the evidence that's going to take the most time. So after this presentation, if you think that you qualify for DACA, I would start collecting all of this now. It is just a very extensive amount of information, and you'll need it eventually, might as well do it now. So basically you need to provide proof of continuous presence in the United States since June 15th, 2007 until today. In the past, when DACA was originally established, this was a lot easier because the time period was from 2007 until 2012. So it was only 5 years. Now it's going on 14 years of presence, and you still have to show the same quality of evidence and quantity. So basically what CASA's standard is that you should have a piece of evidence that has your name, a location in the US, and a date on it from every 2 to 3 months since June 15th, 2007. Ideally, you'll have a couple documents from early 2007 in order to show you were here before then, but you will have to show the every 2 months or 3 months since then. For kids who are super young, it is super difficult to get evidence from the early time period, from like 2007, 2008, 2009. CASA can help work with you to find whatever evidence may exist. But as a standard practice, we never turn away evidence. You should always provide as much as possible. No amount of evidence is too much, as long as, again, it shows your name, the location in the US, and a date on it. So some of these types of evidence I will go into more details on what I typically see for DACA applicants, but just in general, what we see is rent receipts or utility bills, employment records, if you are a DACA recipient who is like a little older. Just to be clear, these records can't have the names of your parents on them. Well, it can include the name of your parents, but it has to have your name. However, for taxes, and any documents like that where it is your parents' taxes with you listed as a dependent, or the DACA recipient listed as dependent, that is actually not sufficient evidence. So I can go into that more in the Q&A, but basically that's the one thing we see a lot that does not actually help, basically because a parent can file for a child who's not actually in the US. And then school records is the honestly main form of evidence that I see, especially since DACA recipients are all young. We can see school records extending from like 2007 until today, especially for kids who just graduated high school, or if you just started at Montgomery College, then you ideally would have been in school from 2007 until 2020, and then graduated and went to college. So all of your school records will cover all of the continuous presence evidence. And I will emphasize this as I get to the examples, but we are really looking for a specific type of school records. But if you have a ton of school records, it can normally add up to the every 2 months since 2007. Military records, again, rare, but also serve well. Any official records from a religious entity for like a confirmation or a baptism in the United States, that can work as well. And then also birth certificates of children born in the US, especially for our female DACA recipients. Obviously, if you had a child in the US that was born in the US, you would also be there. And then just some more options that we have for proof of continuous presence. So basically you could use copies of money order receipts or any kind of receipts that have your name, a location in the US, and a date on it. You can have the passport entries showing that you entered. This would be more before 2007 than after, but if you entered with a visa, that visa will show that you entered before 2007, and that will make it clear that you do qualify for DACA based on that date. You obviously will still need the continuous presence since then. And sorry for everyone sending questions in the chat. I will be able to answer at the end. I just am not able to answer any questions right now. And also, if you have any bank statements that have the dated transactions on them that show transactions in the US, that also works. That's another big thing that we have for people if they graduated high school. Obviously, school records will end, but then if they opened a bank account, the bank records will show that they were making transactions actively in the US. Any other kind of receipts can work for a car insurance payments. Also, if you have like a deed with your name on it, a mortgage, rental agreement contracts. This applies both for DACA recipients like after they graduate high school and kind of move out of their parents' house, or for the early evidence from June 15, 2007, if a parent had a rental agreement that listed the child who's a DACA recipient or potential DACA recipient as someone who lives in the household, that can also show evidence, and we found that very helpful in the early years. And the last thing we want to mention is medical and immunization records. So medical records are really important. I would honestly, if you have a consistent place where you've been, like a hospital or a doctor's office where you've been over the years, to have medical appointments, yearly physicals, anything like that, I would request those medical records now, because those will be super helpful in providing evidence over the years as well. Immunization records are only helpful if you have the date and the location of the US for each vaccine. That's not super common, but it is something that exists where on your vaccine little booklets, it will list the vaccines that were done at a certain clinic in the US and also separate any vaccines that were done in your home country. So those kind of vaccines are the ones that are the best. I will go into that later as I share a photo of that. So I cannot emphasize strongly enough how important attendance records are. So basically attendance records will cover so many years of continuous presence if you have them. Like I said, like you should request your school records now, and specify that you need your full attendance records, because we want to show that you were in school and like actively attending school for all the years that you were enrolled. Some schools do provide just like a list of enrollment years, the attendance records. That's really important to actually get your attendance records in order to prove that like you didn't miss 2 months in the middle of your school year where you went to your home country. So that is really important. I know for a fact that Montgomery County does have an attendance record similar to this one. Prince George's County does as well, if you happen to be from there. And you can ask at the end of this this presentation, we'll have resources that you can ask on how to get attendance records specifically in Montgomery County and where to request them. But basically, like I said, like if you were in school from around 2007 until whenever you graduated, that covers 12 years, just because like school is that long. So it makes it really easy to cover a long time period with very few pieces of evidence. Just want to emphasize this document specifically does not list attendance. It does help, but it is not as strong. This is an enrollment document. It shows like the enrollment years of this particular student for all the years they were in school, but it does not contain attendance records, so it's not as strong for evidence, but it is helpful. So it helps to get this as well. Taxes, like I said, if they are your own taxes that you filed in recent years, that can be really helpful in showing that you were here in the country. However, if they were your parents' taxes with you filed as a dependent, that is not as strong evidence, because you didn't have to be here for your parents to be here and file as a dependent or file with you as a dependent. Other like random documents, I like to call them, that often work is like notes from a doctor excusing someone from school. This, before it was marked off, had a client's name on it, a date, and then the location of the doctor's office. So any appointment notices like this, you can collect them and turn all of those in. Like I said, rent and housing agreements that include the name of the child or the DACA applicant on them, showing that they live at a certain residence. That is super helpful, and that is very strong evidence because someone is actively paying to be somewhere with that child or DACA applicant. Any camp certificates, this is especially relevant in the summer. A lot of times kids only have records from school. They don't have any like evidence from the summer. That's not basically a deal breaker. You can have gaps in the summer, since it's really only a 2-month period of gaps. However, if anyone went to like a sports camp, like here, like a church camp, any kind of like extracurricular or like academic camp, having those certificates is super helpful as well. And will basically show that someone was here in the summer and didn't like go on vacation to their home country in the summer. Bank statements with transaction history are amazing, as I said, for after someone has graduated from high school or when they're still in high school. But basically the statements should be the actual complete statements with all of the transactions that show that someone was actively making purchases in the US. And it should have their name, a bank in the US, and transactions with locations in the US. And it will show dates of everything, so that can cover a really long time period. Like I said, for vaccination records, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my mouse, but this particular vaccination record has the Anne Arundel Medical Center listed as the location for some of the vaccines. So it does indicate that this person was here in Anne Arundel during that date for that vaccine. So this type of vaccination record is very strong evidence for a client. However, if you see this vaccination record, it just has the dates and the type of vaccine. This is not as strong because these vaccinations could have been done anywhere. It could have been done in a person's home country. This particular one, it was done in the person's home country. So it was very clear that they were not here during that time period. But yeah, just very important that there is a location in the US on these records. And then also a lot of kids, even when they're young, do get an ITIN number, so like a tax ID number. And all of the renewals that they do for that number, that can be used as evidence for continuous presence. So if you have any of this, I know this is common for undocumented people to have ITIN account or ITIN numbers. So if you have any records of those, you can use that as well to provide proof of your presence in the US, because it would be sent to your address, which again is marked off on this one, but would be on someone else's. And then these again are just kind of like a random document, but a lot of kids have like random like school IDs, or they have like lost child safe IDs, and anything that's like a season pass to Six Flags, any tickets to Six Flags that had like a photo on it. All of those documents can be used to prove that they were in the US. Oftentimes the kids don't have things from their early years. So if anyone ever had a season pass to Six Flags, that actually can be used as evidence. So anything that seems like it's too random to actually be submitted to a government agency, never think that, because as I said, as long as it has someone's name on it, a date between 2007 and now, and a location in the US, that will work as evidence. Then we just have kind of some school correspondences. So anything that like establishes someone was going to start school, or if they had gotten like free lunch, or like had like their bus stop assigned, any notices like that will also show that someone is in the US, obviously if they were waiting at their bus stop. And then, like I said, religious certificates, if someone received their like first communion or their confirmation in the US, those kind of certificates work, as long as like the church is located in the US and it's clear that it's located in the US. And then also any kind of school certificates, like I said, like it could seem silly, like if you like present your perfect attendance certificate, or like this student did a good job on whatever homework certificate. A lot of kids have those, and those, as long as they say the name of the school and the date and the kid's name, then they do prove as evidence in the US as well. Also, perfect attendance certificates can replace attendance records in some years if you're having trouble getting those, and if everyone, or if the DACA applicant was constantly in school, perfect attendance certificates can be really helpful in filling entire years. And then that was basically it for evidence of continuous presence. Obviously that was very extensive, but the evidence needed is very extensive. So once I finish presenting, I can answer some questions in the Q&A, but basically that is going to be the bulk of the work of preparing your application, is doing this, collecting all of these documents from over the years. And it's important to note that for the DACA application, it's not just like what you have laying around in your house. Like if you can collect evidence that's already in your house, it's really important to note that you have to actively go and get this evidence if you don't have it. So school records and medical records, like I said, request them now. If you don't have them already, you will need them. And even if you think you have some school records, you will probably need more, so you might as well request them now. And then the next section is just going to be about how to prove like different types of status. So let me just get there. So basically, I can breeze over this, that arrival before your 16th birthday, basically you can use an entry stamp if you entered the US with a visa. You can use your passport stamp, your I-94. That specifically is if you entered with a visa. If you didn't enter with a visa, you can just show any school transcripts or any of the previously mentioned things that have your birthday on them, or that basically were in a location in the US that is on a date before you turn 16. So like if you entered the United States in 2006 and either first piece of evidence is from 2006 when you were 4, that will serve as the proof of evidence. Basically, once you get all of the rest of the evidence for continuous presence, you will also have something that proves that you were here before you were 16, because 2007, basically, most people were here before they were 16.
Emily, if there's a lot of people asking a very similar question, if not the same question,
Sure.
And it is, when do they qualify? Can you please go over that one more time? So what is the date and how old do you have to be?
So basically, in order to qualify for DACA, you had to have entered the US before June 15th, 2007.
So you have to have entered before June 15, 2007, right?
And you also had to have been under 16 when you entered the country. So It doesn't matter. The June 15, 2007 date doesn't matter for that. You just, when you entered the US, you had to have been under 16.
So they had to be under 16 by that date, right?
When they entered. So on the date they entered, they had to be under 16. And just one more thing, just for kids to know now, in order to apply now, you have to be 15 or older. Like currently, you have to have already turned 15 just to like apply.
Oh, so to apply right now, you have to be at least 15 years old.
Also, just a thing to note is that 2007 is now getting on 14 years ago. So basically, most people who do qualify already. There's only about a year's worth of people who are 14 now, who entered the country when they were like months old, who would be able to qualify like next year. But we're getting to the time frame that basically anyone who's eligible can apply because of the fact that DACA was now, like the date of entry was now 14 years ago. And just finishing up the evidence real quick, just want to give an example. This is an I-94, and it shows also the stamp of entry into the US. I-94s were given by paper when you entered with a visa. So if you entered with a visa, you would have that. This is a visa. You can also, if you had a visa in your passport and came on a plane or came with a visa by car, you would know. And then you could use that to show that you entered when you were under 16. And it also shows your manner of entry and that your status would have expired for specific visas after a certain amount of time if you overstayed. If you didn't have status, if you crossed the border, just like with your family, if you walked across the border, whatever, if you were detained by immigration when you entered, you may have received a notice to appear. We would advise you on that just based on how, what it means that you're applying for DACA while having a previous removal order, which is what you would have received if you never went to your immigration or proceedings. However, this does actually provide evidence that you entered the United States and the status you had at entry. So this is something good to present in order to show the date of entry that you had in the US, because a document like this from immigration would show that what type of status you had when you were entering, when you entered, everything like that. And that's pretty much it. There's also, if you enter the United States without any immigration status and were never caught by immigration at the border, you do not have to provide evidence that you don't have immigration status. That is just an evidence step you can skip. If you've never had immigration status, you don't need to prove that. This is just a list of the required forms for DACA. So basically there's a DACA form to apply for DACA itself, a form to apply for employment authorization, one other form to explain why you need employment authorization. And then for CASA specifically, we represent you in all your cases. Actually, I represent all of our DACA cases. So I submit my G28, which is basically showing I will represent all of our DACA applicants and help with any issues that may arise. And then one more form that just shows that you will get text messages from USCIS when they receive your application. And then reaching the end of my presentation, there's just a couple required things beyond the evidence that I want to basically give warning about. So the DACA application does cost a lot of money. It costs $495, and there is only a waiver available for very specific circumstances that oftentimes just don't apply to people. So you will have to be prepared to pay $495, which will go to the government to pay for your DACA application. And you will also need 2 passport style photos that you can get at like CVS or Walgreens or anything like that. But just so you know that that is something you will need to get. And lastly, I can hover this on the screen for a little bit just so everyone can write it down. So if anyone wants to be screened for DACA eligibility, if you entered the United States before 2007, when you were under 16, those are the 2 main things you should like check first. You can contact me or you can contact CASA, but you will be contacting me to be screened for DACA eligibility. So you can either send me a text or call me at 240-491-5764 or email me at esullivan@wearecasa.org in order to get a screening. So basically, when you contact me, I will just send you a text message with a link to a survey that will ask you questions that will help me determine if you're eligible for DACA. And then once you fill out that survey, I will pass your information on to a team of private volunteer attorneys who are working with us virtually in order to prepare DACA applications in a safe way during the pandemic. So if you are interested in learning if you're eligible for DACA or have any questions that I don't answer for you at the end of this presentation, you can feel free to email, text, or call me anytime. Just as everyone knows, if you call me leaving a message about interest in DACA, I will just send you a text back just with the screening, so I'll have to send it to you via text anyways. So that's the best way to communicate with me is text or email, but my phone does work for calling. And that's pretty much it. If we figure out that you're eligible for DACA, we will work with you to prep the application virtually, and then we'll have you come in to sign and send the application. That is also just one option. You can work with CASA. There's also other immigration organizations in the area that can help you with DACA.
So I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves now and to tell us in what role do you help DACA seeking students? We can start with Margarita from MCPS.
I'm Margarita Borges. I'm the supervisor of international admissions for Montgomery County Public Schools. So all families who arrived from abroad do come through my office for enrollment in the district, and we would be happy to help with any questions around documentation, attendance, records. Although those schools do issue that paperwork, we would be happy to help with any questions.
My name is Maria Garcia. I am an ESOL counselor at Gaithersburg High School. My passion is to help students that are applying for college and financial aid. You do not have to have DACA to qualify for financial aid. There's the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and there's a lot of money, but you have to apply for it. And so I also wanted to provide you with a little bit of information. If you do need your school records, I just placed over here in the chat where you can get your school records if you have already graduated. And if you are a student at your school, and then you should speak to the registrar and they will give you a verification letter. My last comment will be, attendance is extremely important, because if you are absent from school for a month or 2 months, we have absolutely no idea how to justify that lack of attendance. So that's very important.
My name is Priscilla Aguilar Villatoro, and I work in the Records and Registration Office at the Rockville campus. And I assist students with the Maryland DREAM Act application process. So I know that there are many students on this chat that unfortunately, due to one reason or another, either age or the time that they came into the US, they would not qualify for DACA, unfortunately. But I'm here to tell you that there's also an opportunity for students to be eligible for in-state and in-county tuition. This is through the Maryland DREAM Act. And I can provide more information to you. I'll provide my email and contact information. I'm more than happy to speak with students one-on-one via Zoom as well.
I'm Linda Robinson, and I'm a counselor at Montgomery College, and I help students that have applied to Montgomery College and have been admitted to learn about the courses that they need to take for whatever majors they're interested. We do career counseling in my area. We work with students who are interested in transferring out of Montgomery College to four-year colleges and universities to continue their studies. And we, of course, help undocumented students. We also can help students that are undocumented learn about different scholarships and financial aid opportunities. The students who qualify for the Maryland DREAM Act, as Priscilla already mentioned, one of the benefits of qualifying for the Maryland DREAM Act, besides getting in-state tuition at Maryland state universities and colleges, for that Maryland DREAM Act, you just have had to be graduated from a Maryland high school. There isn't a time, that you have to be in the high school just to have graduated. So it could be even 1 year. And besides the in-state tuition benefit, also you would be able to then apply for financial aid through the state of Maryland, being an undocumented student that qualifies for Maryland DREAM Act.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists here. Thank you all for submitting questions. We so appreciate your participation.